Welcome to The Explainer. We turn on the tap every single day, completely without a second thought. But the system actually delivering that safe, clean water to your glass, it's an absolute marvel. Today, we're taking a fascinating journey into the unseen world of urban water security. We're going to explore how we've evolved from ancient, gravity-fed Roman aqueducts to highly vulnerable digital networks, and finally to the living, breathing biological sentinels acting as our ultimate safeguard. Because today, the journey your water takes is incredibly complex. It travels from a raw water source through massive pumping facilities into intricate chemical treatment plants, and finally through a vast distribution network straight to your home. It's a high-tech, highly automated process. But here's the wild part. Protecting this entire multi-billion-dollar modern infrastructure from some of the deadliest invisible threats, it actually relies on a fish. Yep, a literal living fish. But hey, before we get to our aquatic sentinels, we need to take a step back in time. Okay, let's dive into this. Our roadmap today covers the ancient roots of hydrology, the modern digital utility, invisible and cyber threats, the biological safety net, and lastly, capacity and true cost. So, starting with Section 1, the ancient roots of hydrology. To really understand our modern systems, we have to look at how early civilizations built the structural prerequisites for sustainable city life. Tracing the hydraulic foundation of human civilization takes us back thousands of years. While early settlements just relied on their immediate natural surroundings, booming populations demanded massive engineering. Take the Minoans on the island of Crete. They were using rooftop rainwater cisterns and even had running water and flushing latrines, literally 1,000 years before the classical Greeks and Romans. And later, of course, the Romans engineered massive underground and above-ground aqueduct networks. They used gravity to transport water over incredible distances to supply public baths, fountains, and highly dense urban centers. They laid the literal groundwork for urban infrastructure. And the concern for unseen water quality? That's thousands of years old, too. Way back in 84 BC, the Roman architect Vitruvius warned of a fountain in Chios where, quote, "those who imprudently drink become foolish." Ancient engineers didn't have microscopes, right? But they absolutely knew that water could carry hidden, invisible dangers that severely impacted the human body. Which brings us to Section 2, the modern digital utility. Because today's water systems are no longer just physical pipes. They're managed by highly sophisticated digital nervous systems and brains. To manage these massive systems, utilities map reality using geographic information systems, or GIS. Now, while some models, like the raster model, just show continuous surface elevation, the real magic happens in the vector model. This maps the exact boundaries and locations of the incredibly complex web of underground mains right beneath our feet. By using points, lines, and polygons, it tracks the material, the age, and the precise connectivity of every single pipe, valve, and surface connection in the entire city. So if GIS is the map, SCADA is the central nervous system. SCADA stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. Using remote terminals out in the field, it beams real-time data on pressure and flow straight back to a central hub. This gives operators a live look at the city's entire water flow. And instead of manually turning giant physical wheels, operators can remotely open valves, turn on pumps, and basically control the city's water flow with the click of a mouse. It's incredibly efficient. But that efficiency comes with a dark side. Moving on to Section 3, invisible and cyber threats. We're going to shift our focus now to the terrifying vulnerabilities that target this highly integrated physical and digital infrastructure. Because our systems are so massive and interconnected, utilities constantly run vulnerability war games. They simulate worst-case scenarios to predict catastrophic failures before they actually happen. It's a four-step process. They inventory every digital and physical component, estimate the impact of various hazards, establish life safety performance goals, and ultimately identify the critical points of failure whose destruction could cripple an entire city. Which leads to a pretty chilling question. What happens when the digital brain is hijacked? Since SCADA systems remotely control the physical valves, a cyber terrorist doesn't even need to physically blow up a pipe. If they gain unauthorized access, they could neutralize chemical disinfectants, or even worse, rapidly open and close massive valves to induce what's known as a water hammer effect. This pressure shockwave can literally cause simultaneous water main breaks all across a city. Just let that sink in. Beyond cyber attacks, there's the devastating threat of physical contamination. And the sheer volume of threats is staggering. We're talking about pathogens like anthrax, highly lethal biotoxins like ricin and T2 mycotoxin, and military-grade nerve agents like VX and sarin. What makes these so incredibly dangerous is that agents like ricin, T2 mycotoxin, and certain parasites are astonishingly stable in aquatic environments. They're completely resistant to standard chlorine treatments. You could pump standard levels of chlorine into the water, and these deadly toxins would just survive, passing right through the treatment plant and straight to a consumer's kitchen tap. And this brilliantly illustrates our next pivot. Section 4, the biological safety net. How do we detect a threat that survives our chemicals and hides from our sensors? Well, we turn to nature's solution. To really grasp this, we first have to define the chemical gap. See, standard automated sensors are fantastic, but they're only programmed to look for specific physical changes, things like shifts in pH, temperature, or conductivity. A chemical gap occurs when a highly potent toxin, like weaponized ricin or botulinum, reaches lethal concentrations in the water without actually altering those standard markers. The toxins essentially slip right through the digital net completely undetected, simply because the sensor doesn't know to look for them.
This is exactly where bioassays, using living organisms, come into play. The big biological advantage here is that a living creature doesn't need to be pre-programmed. Instead of hunting for a specific chemical signature, a living creature responds to the actual toxicological impact of the water. It provides a massive, broad safety net. If something in the water is toxic, the living organism will react, giving us real-time notification of emerging or even entirely unknown agents.
And this brings us right back to the fish. Advanced water utilities like the renowned Hardhof complex in Zurich, Switzerland, utilize literal fish test facilities. They often use highly sensitive species, like bluegill sunfish and fathead minnows, as biomonitors. The drinking water continuously flows right through their tanks. If a deadly nerve agent or a chlorine-resistant biotoxin hits the water, these living sentinels exhibit immediate stress responses. It acts as an instant immune response warning, and because this is integrated directly with the SCADA system, if an intrusion alarm goes off at a pumping station, operators instantly check the fish. If the fish are reacting, they know it's a verified contamination event, and they can shut the whole system down to save lives. It's incredible. Now, moving to our final layer of defense, Section 5, capacity and true cost. This is the unseen shield of finance. Without it, everything else we've talked about just collapses. You see, all the brilliant GIS mapping, the high-tech sensors, even those biological sentinels, they are all completely useless if the utility itself collapses. Utilities rely on 3 core pillars: the technical infrastructure working, the financial credit to keep the lights on, and the managerial staff to actually remain accountable. If any one of these legs breaks, the entire city's water security is fundamentally compromised. So the crucial point here is how a utility manages its assets. We're looking at the difference between the absolute panic of reactive maintenance, which is just patching pipes after they burst and desperately trying to get by, and the calm calculation of proactive management. This proactive approach uses integrated GIS and financial data to predict when, say, a pipe from the 1950s is likely to fail. That allows the utility to fund preventative rehabilitation and replace the asset way before a catastrophic failure ever happens. But being proactive, that takes money. This means revenue sufficiency, charging for the true long-term value of the system. This is exactly why your water bill matters so much. By properly accounting for infrastructure depreciation, a utility ensures that when a massive water main reaches the end of its life, there is actually cash in the bank to replace it seamlessly. That's what maintains the structural integrity of the entire system. Which brings us to the end of our journey today, leaving us with this final thought to ponder. If our most advanced digital technology relies on a simple fish to detect invisible poisons, and our massive physical infrastructure relies entirely on our civic willingness to pay its true cost, how secure is the water you drink today? It's a complex, layered system of ancient foundations, digital brains, living sentinels, and economic realities. Thanks for joining me on The Explainer, and keep asking the big questions.